Okay, so now we have our next speaker with quite an interesting topic, which is called Advanced Data Visualization in React. And to me personally, that's again interesting because working as a project manager, I have to deal a lot with the data and with the data analytics in order to understand how my teams are performing, are we well on track, and so on. That's what I can see from the user point of view. So now we would like to focus on the discussion itself. And here's what our speaker says is that D3 is the most popular library for creating interactive data visualizations. And React is one of the most popular frameworks for web development. Duh, that's why we are here. That's true. But anyone who has tried to use them together has realized they don't always play nice. In this talk, I will share how I learned the hard way, as well as tips and case studies for building data visualizations in React, and want to give the power to D3. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Danielle Carrick, Senior Data Visualization Engineer from Condé Nast. Hi, Danielle. How
Hi,
are you doing?
how are you? How's it going?
Oh, it's amazing now. We have a nice session here. And yeah, we all feel the vibe listening to interesting people and their opinions.
Very cool, very cool. So you can hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you well. And tell us, please, just a few words. Why, like, why data visualization? What inspired you? What was
Mhm.
the goal of it?
Yeah, so I actually started my career focusing on data visualization, primarily in print or in presentations, infographics, that sort of thing.
Oh,
So
nice.
really, I didn't start with programming and then incorporate data visualization. I sort of went the opposite direction. I started with
Mhm.
data visualization and realized how much cooler it can be if it's online and interactive, and all the new possibilities that come from that.
Just amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of infographics just because it's really a better way of presenting the data, visualizing it, but also by processing. Just because the visual core in our brain seems to be the most powerful part of the entire brain at all. It's just exactly the same way as GPU is the most powerful and performant part of the modern
Mhm.
computers. So yeah, working with this directly is actually our future. So yeah, I'm very excited with that. Go ahead
All
and
right,
have a nice
totally.
session. Okay,
Okay,
here you
cool.
are.
We can see my screen. Everything's good. All right. Hopefully, let's all cross our fingers that the internet holds out. But if not, we'll just come back. No big deal. Okay, so yeah, my name is Danielle Carrick. I am the manager of data visualization at Condé Nast. And in my talk today, I'm going to go through how is the best way to use React, which is one of the most popular front end frameworks, along with D3, which is one of the most popular data visualization frameworks. And there are definitely a few tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way to make sure that you are using the most powerful parts of React as long with the most powerful parts of D3 to really make the most awesome performant visualizations, whether it be for dashboards or for some other sort of purpose. But first, a little bit about myself and Condé Nast. For those who might be joining internationally or aren't so familiar, Condé Nast is a huge publishing company. In the US, they have a little over 20 different brands, including The New Yorker, Pitchfork, Vogue, Teen Vogue, GQ, Wired, all sorts of those. Abroad, you'll also see a lot of international versions of Vogue, some international versions of other ones as well. So my team works across all of these different brands to look at the data that they have and help visualize and communicate it in the best way possible to our business stakeholders. Another interesting fact as well is that Condé Nast gets almost internationally over 400 million visits to their websites and close to 1 billion video views across all of these brands. So we're definitely getting a huge audience and a lot of traffic. And most of the work that I do at Condé Nast, I've been there for, I think, a little over 3 years now, is with JavaScript, D3, and React. And I'll go into a few examples of different projects that have been using these tools. So first of all, I mean, why React? Why D3? React, as you can see, I mean, this is kind of an old screenshot. I think the numbers on this are much higher now. Super popular front-end framework. D3 also super popular data visualization library. So chances are, whether you want to or not, you're definitely going to be coming across these two, and you're going to want to know what is the best way to combine them together. So for those that maybe are less familiar with D3, I think it's good for me to give a little bit of a background and some context of why it would be a challenge to combine these two. D3 works by accessing the DOM. For those that are familiar, you'll probably remember you see a lot of things in D3 like D3.select, D3.selectAll, D3.append. This is doing something similar to like what jQuery will do, where it grabs onto a DOM element and is adding things or attaching things to the DOM. But of course, React, its power is also working with the DOM, where React creates a virtual DOM. So if you have D3 that's trying to access the DOM through D3.select or D3.append, and you have React over here trying to set up its virtual DOM, they can come into conflict and create unexpected, undesirable results. So that's why part of what we're going to look at here is which parts of D3 to use versus which parts of React to use. All right, but first let me start off by just showing some examples of the different kind of work that I've done over time at Condé. So this is actually one of the first pieces that I did, and this actually was totally just in D3. So I have it open over here. So this piece was done for Wired, and the cool thing about this is that for a long time, Wired has had a section in the back of their magazine called Info Porn, and it features really cool, interesting data visualizations. So my team wanted to come in and make that really awesome print piece into a really awesome web-based piece. So we started off with this one. So what it's showing is different data leaks and data breaches that have been happening over time, whether it's hacking, skimming, phishing one, insider theft one, all the different types. And the print piece used this chart type. It's called a horizon chart. It's really cool, but like not necessarily well known. So one thing that we thought would be really awesome to do is to help people who are less familiar with this chart type understand exactly what they're looking at by adding the web component and that interaction. So if you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know what a horizon chart is. Really, a horizon chart is just an area chart, which I think most people are very familiar with. And it's, if you can imagine, you took a scissor and you sliced across these area charts and made them into 6 sections and then stacked them on top of each other. So you can kind of see what that looks like. So pretty much the darker the color, that's the higher the density and the higher the value. So that way we were able to take a chart that was less familiar to people and make it clear and understandable through interactive data visualization. And if you looked at this code, it's like 10 feet long because kind of the way that D3 tends to structure things, which is one reason also why moving to using React and D3 has been a really awesome choice. So that's one piece that was exciting. Another piece that we did a while back, it was for Teen Vogue, and this was at the 1 year mark of Donald Trump's presidency. So he, as many people probably noticed, uses Twitter a lot. So we wanted to look at what sorts of things he is tweeting about. So we can go check that out here. Yeah, there we go.
Danielle, just a quick request from what I can see from the audience. People are asking if you can just adjust the central part of the screen so that it takes like just a bigger image to fit the screen size.
Like this?
I'm sure it can, yeah, it can do the trick. Thank you.
Hopefully, there we go. Okay, no problem. So you might be wondering, how often does he talk about, let's say, like the media, and you can filter and zoom in that way and kind of explore all these different kinds of tweets. Again, this one was done in just D3. But that brings us to kind of the piece that sort of made me realize the importance of working with React and D3 together. This one was a project for The New Yorker to create a live midterm election map. It was a pretty exciting project, partially because the project started maybe like a week and a half before the actual election. It was the first time that any brand at Condé Nast was using a live API. So it was a really tight deadline, new technology. A lot can happen for sure. You learn a lot in a really short amount of time. So pretty much we had a group of developers. My role was to create the map. And so I was creating it in D3, which was the area that I was most familiar with. But when it came time to combine the different parts of the project together, the React piece of the project with the D3 piece of the project kind of came across. That's when I sort of realized that they don't play so nicely. So let's see. So as you can see, the project did get finished, thankfully. It all worked out. But the way that we had to solve it is something that you guys can do if you find yourself in a similar situation. If you have a fully fledged working D3 map and you're like, all right, I just need to put it into my React project, you can sort of mimic the D3.select. So rather than what also, for those who are familiar with D3, this kind of line of code should look super familiar to you. Like you create your SVG inside some div in your HTML tree, which is what we're trying to avoid now if we want to kind of separate concerns. But if you were like, all right, deadline's in an hour, I have to do it, then you could wrap it up in the React fashion by doing it this way. So it can definitely solve your problem, but hopefully you'll see, if you have some more time, I can show you ways to set it up that I think you'll appreciate much more. So first of all, I want to share this tweet from Amelia Wattenberger, who, if you're kind of looking to learn more about React in D3 or Angular in D3, anything in D3, she has an amazing book about it. Definitely a great resource. But one reason to also kind of keep React for rendering, which it's great at, and keep D3 for sort of the math, which it's great at, is it's also faster. So in this test that she did, using D3 for rendering took 4 times as long as separating the two. All right, so I feel like I told you a little bit already about why React in D3, but we're going to dive into it even a little bit more. So one major reason here is a GIF of a project that we've done at Condé Nast. So this is a dashboard that has all sorts of information about the brands and the topics that people are reading. And one major reason why I would say use React and D3 together is because creating something like this was just so much faster, so much easier when you are using the React's ability to render really quickly, really smoothly, and also with D3's ability to do some really cool calculations for you. So to kind of summarize it, I would say React, keep that all, that's all the DOM manipulation goes to React. Anything that has to do with data manipulation, doing any kind of math formula, that can be with D3. And I'll show you some examples. So we can start off with a bar chart. I think I'll start with a bar chart, because it's one of the most common chart types. It's also one of the most robust chart types. There's almost any scenario, a bar chart is a good option for you. So since a lot of people will probably be using this, coming across this, a great place to start. So here's a screenshot from what I had, that GIF that I had shared previously. So this is a bar chart created with React and D3. I'll go actually through a few more examples and then get into sort of the pieces of it. So there's obviously, like I was saying before, tons of kinds of bar charts that you can use in the world. And they all boil down to kind of the same base code. So if you wanted to create a bar chart, the only thing that you really probably need from D3 is its scale function. So for those that are familiar with D3, you know that when you are setting up a project, a bar chart, a line chart, anything, you need to create a scale. So that's what is determining the x-axis and the y-axis and where to plot those points along that axis or scale. In this case, for a bar chart, you'll be using a linear scale. And with D3, you tell it what is the domain of possible values to expect. So in the case of the bar chart, I'm saying that the values I might give you are going to be anywhere between 0 and whatever this max value that we can calculate from our data. And then you also give it a range. So you say, all right, given this domain of values, I want you to plot it in between a specific range. So between a pixel value of 0 and the full width available to the chart. And so that way D3 comes in, if you give it the value of 55, it can convert that value of 55 to the correct pixel position, which is obviously super duper handy when you're creating any kind of bar chart or visualization. So all you really have to do in D3 is set up the scale. And then in React, because of the way it's set up, you can come in here, and a bar chart is really just a rectangle, an SVG rectangle. And you are telling it to be a certain height or width depending on the data. So I come in here and I just say, hey, take the scale that I created in D3, and given whatever data point I am rendering, make the rectangle that width. And that's pretty much only thing that's happening behind the scenes. So compared to bar chart code that's D3 only, this is much simpler, much more concise, and I think also makes a lot more sense with, if you're used to React, makes a lot more sense with kind of the thought process and the way that you build things. So that's a bar chart or many bar charts. So the next probably most common popular visualization type would be a line chart. There's also a really cool way to combine D3 and React in this case. So here's an example of a line chart that we use in our work at Condé Nast, and this is this is built with the method that I mentioned by combining React and D3. So what that looks like in the code is pretty much all you need React to do, or sorry, D3 to do. Of course, you would set up a scale similar to the bar chart, so I won't repeat that here. But the tricky part is, how do you draw a line given a set of data? So luckily for us, D3 has a function for that. They have this D3.line, which is a line generator. And you set up this function and you give it a property for the curve. So this just means like make it a nice kind of nice fitting curve. And you tell it where it can find the X values in your data. So in this case, we're plotting over time. So we're pointing to the date field, and where to find the Y values in your data. So in this case, kind of a generic value key. And it takes all the information and it does all the cool math behind the scenes, which I'll skip ahead just real quick. This is basically what it's calculating. So imagine trying to do that yourself, programmatically telling the path, where to start, where the next point should be, where the next point should be, where the next point should be. It's very, very handy to have D3 do that calculation for us. So then all we have to do is pass the output of that function to the D value in the path, and voila, we have a line. So that's, again, I think at one point I had if you just go and Google kind of like D3 line chart and you see what it looks like if it's just D3, you'll see a lot of D3.select, .append, like a lot of chaining of things. And it's just, it works. And if you're familiar with that syntax, that can work for you too. But I just think this is like so much more straightforward and so much easier. Okay, and here's our cool line. All right, so kind of the project that had started me on this journey of understanding how best to use React and D3 together was that map that we had looked at earlier. So let's look at another kind of map. This one is that same map that we saw before, except instead of using the actual state outlines, each state is represented as a hexagon. And this also, really all we had to do here was, this is the full set of code. So all we were doing, the only piece that is relying on D3 for is to set up that color scale. So given if the value is GOP or Democrat or independent, we determine the color. And the rest is all React. All right, so those are line chart, bar chart, map. I think these are ones that you'll, if you're kind of new in this space, you'll come across a lot. And those are the first ones that I had been using most for a long time as well. So now I kind of want to get into more advanced versions and visualizations, including node layouts. So I think in this shows even more the power of D3's math functions to do all that tricky calculation for you. So here's one. Okay. This was a piece that my team had done around Thanksgiving for Epicurious, which is one of our like food recipe brands. So cool part about this, if you've seen D3's force layouts, pretty much like a force layout is if you have a collection of nodes, you can determine how much they're going to attract or repel each other based off of different factors. And it's basically just physics. And you don't want to have to write your own physics functions. It's just so much nicer that someone did it for you. So the final product of this is I can come to this page and maybe, Thanksgiving is actually kind of coming up in the US now. So maybe I know that I want a vegetarian Thanksgiving, and I actually just really like cauliflower. So these are two ingredients that I definitely want on my menu. And then I can scroll down and see a bunch of vegetarian recipes that include cauliflower that I can go check out and maybe decide to make. So there's a lot going behind the scenes here. What we have obviously the nodes and also these links that connect the nodes. So where we use D3 for these is, okay. So for starters, D3 has a lot of really handy functions just to help format your data in the best way possible. So I think a lot of people, like, data transformations, it's something you do all the time. It's also something that can be kind of tricky. So D3 has some function or some methods that I use very often. One is the nest function. Basically, this is like nesting all of the recipes according to the recipe name. And then we can map over them and organize it the way that we would like. So that was the first area. And the really important area also was using it to actually calculate the different positions, not of the nodes in this case. In this case, since we wanted to force a grid, we did that calculation ourselves and assigned it an FY and FX value, which in D3 land, if an X and a Y value could change, but an FX and an FY, it stands for fixed Y, fixed X. So it knows like we're going to stay in that location. But what would be more challenging to figure out is the relationships between all of those links in the node. So by setting up a force simulation and passing those nodes to it, D3 creates another object for us that has all of the link connections. So it says, the cauliflower is connected to the vegetarian link and the Brussels sprouts link and the other link, and it has the exact coordinates for all of those, which makes it really easy for us to draw a line between those. So figuring out all of those connections and all of those coordinates ourselves, I think, would be very challenging. But with 3 lines of code, D3 takes care of that for us. So that's a huge help. So then all we have to do once those links and node objects are created is each of those links, so that connection that you saw between the vegetarian node and the cauliflower node, all we're really doing is just passing in the X coordinate and Y coordinate to build all of those. And for the circle itself, we also can just pass in that FX or FY position. And ta-da, easy breezy. So that was a really cool project, because I think it's just like super fun, and it was cool to try to combine D3 and React in a less traditional bar chart, line chart kind of way. So this also led to this project that I'm going to share now, this B-Swarm plot, which is also using the force-directed layouts from D3. So this is something that's still actually in progress. It hasn't been launched yet. So here I can show, you can come here and search for a different artist. In this case, I searched Taylor Swift. Let me see. Oh, the API expired. Okay, so I searched for Taylor Swift. And here I can see all the different artists that are similar to Taylor Swift that have been reviewed by this site. And so if I was like, I've been listening to Taylor Swift and I kind of want to find something that's like similar to her that I might also like. So I come here and I can see that each of these albums are plotted on this bee swarm plot. So a bee swarm plot is similar to a scatter plot, but instead of having a y-axis, all of the nodes cluster together kind of on a center point, which creates this sort of shape that sort of looks like a swarm of bees. So I'm like coming here and I'm saying, oh, like I can see this red dot, which means it's been highly well reviewed. So that's actually another Taylor Swift album. And then maybe I see this like blue dot, and this was an Ed Sheeran album that got a really low rating. So that actually, maybe I want to look at it by the rating. So I can do that as well and see, okay, like maybe Lord, maybe I feel like going to listen to some of her stuff. And I can also go and explore, click and read some of these reviews as well. So this visualization allows a user to start with an artist they like and hopefully discover other artists that they might also be enjoying, which I think in Corona times could be a great use of your extra time. So a little bit about the, let's see, where did my, there it is, okay. So a little bit about the behind the scenes code that went into this. This is another simulation, however, a little bit different than the simulation that we used for the Epicurious piece, because we weren't giving them fixed values. We do need, in this case, D3 to calculate the value for us based off of the data that we give it. So here we're setting up another for simulation. We give it our data, and there's a few different things we need D3 to generate for us. So one is the exposition of that each node. So the way we do that is telling it to set up a force based off of the value that we give it. And then the Y position, so we're not actually, the actual Y value doesn't matter to us because we want it all to cluster in on that center axis. So basically this is saying the Y force is going to attract towards dimensions.height divided by 2, which basically is the center of the visualization. So we want the force to go towards that center. And this force collide has to do, it's just like, again, one of the options, sort of physics related. So we set up that simulation, and D3 can take care of all the calculations and figuring out where they belong in the plot. One thing that is important to know, and I learned while setting this up, is that if you just did this piece up here, you wouldn't get the final visualization, because also the way the simulation works is it's not just calculating it and then it's done, it is iterative. So the same way, maybe if you, again, thinking of physics, if there was something that was bouncing, it kind of would calculate the points over time. It's also calculating the points over time. So you need to force it to go through that calculation loop. Otherwise, your points are just gonna they're going to be permanently stuck in their starting position. But once you have that calculation, then in terms of React, it's very simple and very straightforward to just pass the values that you want. So our circles are going to be at
5 minutes left.
Okay, at the X and Y position. And in this case, you also notice that our colors are the nodes themselves are colored on a scale. So of course we use D3 to set up that color scale. All right, so just to summarize, when you are setting out to make an interactive data visualization using D3 and React, it's best to leave all the DOM manipulation to React, its specialty. And as you can see, D3 has so many powerful utilities for data manipulation and for determining, calculating positions of nodes, of lines, of all of that kind of stuff. And used together, they can make really awesome tools. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, we are back. Perfect. Yeah, I enjoyed your conversation. First of all, because again, I'm a big fan of data visualization in general. So, yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting things in the way like how to implement them and so on. I can also see actually a lot of communication now starting in the comments. Just for you to know, there's almost 600 people looking at us just right now on YouTube, which is quite a lot. Yeah, people are just cheering you, and there's a few questions that are going up with that. And before we're moving to the Q&A panel with the two previous speakers as well, I would like to ask you just a few quick questions. So first of all, I can see people are sharing the d3graphgallery.com website. I opened it on the background as well. I can see quite a lot of different examples of how it works in descriptions. Would you like to share a few words about it?
The d3.js
D3
example gallery.
graph.gallery.com. But not only like this, the question is a little bit wider. Could you just recommend a few maybe main sources of getting such galleries and getting more familiar with different charts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when I'm, say, starting on a project and I want some inspiration, I'm trying to think of something maybe more interesting or more unique than just a bar chart or a line chart. One great place is to go to d3js.org and then look at all of the examples that they have. Most of those will be D3 only for the most part. I have found that it's a little bit difficult, especially like, for example, the B-swarm plot. I wasn't able, just searching to find anyone who had done it with React and D3 separating those two. I'd only found people that had created a D3 only B-swarm plot and then wrapped it and inserted it that way into their React project. So a lot of times, if you want to do the D3 React approach, it might take some additional effort on your part in setting and separating those. But if you just want inspiration or ideas, d3js.org's examples for sure has a lot. I would say also, like the New York Times has really innovative graphics. Flowing Data has a lot of really cool examples, and it's a blog by Nathan Yao that's updated once a week or so.
Okay, thank you. One more question, and we're opening the panel as the time is coming. So, did you try any other data visualization libraries which are easier to operate and depend on Canvas instead of SVG? Quite a good question, I think.
Yeah, I haven't really explored any of those. I know there's a lot of different libraries out there for sure. There's some that are made just for React. There's HighCharts, which people might be familiar with as well. I think the reason I've stuck with D3 for so long is because while there might be a steeper learning curve, it gives you all of the building blocks, and then you can create just about anything. I mean, there might be a new something in a week, in a month, and I would be happy to check it out. But so far, D3 in React has been a successful toolkit for me.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's really good answer. Cool.